So welcome, my name's Chris Birie. I'm doing a talk today on designing data pipelines that don't hate you 6 months later, because who cares if it hates you right now? Like, that's what we're designing for. It's always 6 months down the road when things come back to bite you. And I'm hoping to make this as entertaining as possible. So this is gonna be a sci-fi mixed with kung fu legend story that involves some data engineering, data pipelines. So that is where we're at. So about me, I always call this the why should you listen to me part of my talk. So I have been in data engineering for most of my career, spanning about 13 or 14 years at this point, doing all kinds of things, whether it's DevOps, whether it's creating reporting, whether creating ETL pipelines. Like, I've basically touched everything. And just a warning about me before we go any further, I do have ADHD. I was diagnosed in college, and it just explains so much about me. I have so many interests and hobbies, like I'm always picking up new things and then trying to juggle everything at the same time, whether it's home labbing, whether it's 3D printing, which those are kind of related. I just have so many things. I'm getting into back into yard work and gardening and all that stuff. So it's like I'm just constantly going from thing to thing. And it's so interesting because when I was younger, I wasn't diagnosed, but that was seen as something bad. And now I see it as kind of a superpower, which is great. And growing up, I knew there was always something kind of little different, a little odd about me. And now that I have a 5-year-old son who is exactly like me, I see it in him, and I get it now. So I'm glad I went through that so I can help him get through that. But I knew I had a superpower. I didn't know what it was. And honestly, this is kind of what I thought my superpower would lead to. I hoped I could be like a Power Ranger, a superhero. This is what I thought my future would look like. This is what I thought my superpower was. And yes, I used AI to generate all of the photos in this presentation. You're just gonna have to deal with it. And yeah, that's my last animation, I promise. Everything else is pretty straightforward, but I do think my true miscalling was a WWE professional wrestler. I love entertaining people, being up here, it's exciting to me. I enjoy it. I loved wrestling as a kid. Somehow, no matter what, if I got hit in the head or the face, and people be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's like, but that didn't even hurt. So I don't know, there was just something about that. I never pursued it, but I feel like that's kind of my true missed calling. And speaking of, getting hit in the head over COVID, I feel like that's the punchline to every bad joke, but I picked up doing Kung Fu. I saw a Bruce Lee documentary, and I just looked up Kung Fu near me, and a mile down the road was a Kung Fu studio, and I did the intro lesson. It was awesome, and I've been doing it ever since. So this July, it'll be 6 years. I've learned so much, and as anyone with ADHD knows, as soon as you get really passionate about something, you just go all in. You learn about everything. You just want more, and it's still like that today. I'm an assistant instructor at Western Lotus Martial Athletics and Martial Arts Club here in Columbus, Ohio, and shameless plug. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Seventh Sun Brewing, we're having a free self-defense class, so feel free to stop by. But yeah, my ADHD brain has taken over. I've learned so much, not only about Wing Chun, which is the branch of Kung Fu that I do, but about Chinese culture, Kung Fu movies, et cetera, et cetera. And what's so interesting is I realize that there's so many life lessons that I've learned as I've gone through learning Kung Fu. And it's great. And it's really influenced the way I think about things, the way that I look at life, but also it's going to influence this presentation a lot. So be prepared. No, I'm not going to do a Kung Fu demonstration. I'm not going to, even though I could. So yeah, I asked ChatGPT for this awesome image. I was like, give me my best life, give me what I would look like in my office with my perfect setup. And this kind of explains so much about me because you got Power Rangers, you got multiple monitors, you got video games, you got WWE, Mega Man, Voltron, Kaiju, Godzilla, stuff everywhere. You can find some home lab equipment in there. And so I guess this is what I need my office to look like, and it looks nothing like that right now. It's kind of a hot mess most of the time. But I digress. What were we here to talk about? I can't quite remember. Oh yeah, data pipelines. Specifically, great data pipelines that don't hit you 6 months later. Thank you, PowerPoint, for keeping me honest. I need you to keep me honest, PowerPoint. So a little background just about me and my experience with data pipelines. So I was a tech lead for a predominantly data-focused team, and we had this legacy application data pipeline that I'm pretty sure I once found source code that was written when I was in second grade. This was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. So this is pretty old. A lot of it was pretty old and just kind of got built on top of each other. And as tech lead of this team, I was put on call, and it was bad. I was getting called most nights that I was on call. Even when I wasn't on call, my developers that were on call wouldn't know what to do, so they'd call me. It was a mess. And that's kind of shaped what we're going to see here in the presentation and in our story. So like I said, I'm just up here to kind of entertain you, prep you before the movie. I feel like when I went to Disney World as a kid, when you'd wait for their shows at night, they would always come out with the pre-show entertainment, and that's what I feel like I'm here to do. So let me just start with a story. So our story begins with our hero, and this might look familiar to a lot of people. It's 3 a.m. You were woken up by several pages, several calls on your phone. It's your boss, and they're saying, hey, it's the end of the quarter. Our business folks are freaking out. Their reports aren't populating. So your boss is on you, and so you're like, okay, sit down. I don't even know what's going on. So I pull up, I see this log, and man, there are so many error messages in here. I don't even know what half of these mean. And this was an inherited mess. You can also see, let me see, up there, good, it works. You got Slack, you got people in there saying, hey, what's going on? Like, why didn't QA catch this? What's the update? When is this gonna be fixed? Just a whole lot of things. You have your boss calling you. You have, 7, 8 missed calls. You have dozens of missed messages, just people freaking out. And you're like, I don't even know where to begin. And you get frustrated, and that leads to you doing what, if this was a movie, this would be about the time where this would happen. Freezes, record scratch. You might be wondering how I got here, right? Like any good movie. It starts in the middle and you go backwards. So how did we get here? Well, 6 months earlier is where this can all be traced back to. What happened 6 months ago? How did we get here? Well, enter the Bruce. This is Bruce. He's the antagonist of our story, but he's a good guy. Like, he is good. He is brilliant, a brilliant developer. He was fast. He used AI, and he shipped what he needed early. The pipeline worked beautifully for what he needed at the time and what the business people wanted. Everyone was happy. And Bruce got a pat on the back. Honestly, he probably got a promotion or a bonus. We've all been there. Ultimately, Bruce moved on. Bruce, either in the company or outside of the company, we don't know. But Bruce is not here anymore. And it was kind of thrown over the wall, and you've inherited it. And this was Bruce's pipeline. Now it's your problem. So the main focus, the main point, if you want to say that, of this whole thing is pipelines that are built on shaky fundamentals don't fail on day one. They fail when there's pressure, usually 6 months, a year later, when everyone's moved on, warranty periods ended, and it's now your problem. So just like in martial arts, like most martial arts, they care a lot about your footwork. They want you to have this strong foundation so that you can't get pushed off balance and pushed And just like any software or any data pipeline, it doesn't matter. If it's built on those shaky fundamentals, it's not going to last. And that was the first thing that I learned in martial arts. Spent weeks just drilling on stance and footwork and the fundamentals. The first form that I learned is actually called sunum tao, which means the little ideas. So you're just learning all these little tiny ideas at a time and doing it over and over and over again. And eventually you get to sparring, you get to learning some cool stuff. But if I didn't have those fundamentals, I would not be able to do anything. So again, Bruce wasn't a bad guy. He didn't build a bad data pipeline. He built a pipeline that worked perfectly for the fight that he needed. The problem is the fight changed. It was no longer this small data set. They started putting more data through the data pipeline, and ultimately that brings up a lot of problems. Again, Bruce was gone, so can't rely on him. His pipeline lives on, and right now at 3 a.m., it is absolutely on fire. Who's been in that position before? Getting called at 3 a.m., stuff is on fire, your boss, other business partners are yelling at, like, it's not fun. And it's hard to not blame Bruce at this point, but he did what he was supposed to do. He delivered what was expected of him. But what if we could go back? What if we could go back 6 months ago? Bruce is building this pipeline. He didn't see what was coming in the future. Nobody did. Like, that's the hard part, is that no one could have seen this coming. And if you did, then awesome, you're a time traveler. Good work. But what if we could travel back and change the outcomes? What would we want to teach Bruce to make his pipeline better? And so we're going to go over 5 lessons, and these are 5 chances for us to help Bruce do the right thing and not have us wake up at 5 in the morning. So just an overview, this is where we're going. We're going schema evolution. I hate this word because I can never say it. Idempotency. There we go, did it. Observability, testability, and designing for change. So a warrior or a developer who trains only for the tournament will fall when the real fight comes. And that's what we need to think about with our data pipelines. We don't need to think about what is right in front of us. We need to think about how can this be something that is going to be flexible, is going to be something that lasts, that isn't going to cause someone to curse my name because my name is on that commit message. That is the goal. So, all right, back to our story. We've all been here. And I feel like if I was in this guy's position, I would do what any data engineer, what a responsible data engineer would do at this point, right? You would fix the problem, you would dig in, you would find out what's going on, and just fix it, right? Wrong, that's not what our guy did. He passed out on the couch. He decided, I'm gonna put on my favorite movie. I'm gonna put on Back to the Future because that's great. It's a great movie. In fact, it's being shown in one of the theaters here. And it's interesting, if you see, you might not be able to read it, but he has a mug right here that says, data is greater than sleep, and that is playing out right now. The data needs are more important than this guy's sleep, but he says, whatever. And, you know, he's fading in and out of consciousness, and he hears Doc Brown say, if my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you are gonna see some serious shit. Wait a second. What if we could go back? What if we found Doc Brown's DeLorean and we hopped in? We can go back 6 months. What would we teach Bruce or remind him of? First thing, schema evolution. So 6 months ago, Bruce trusted that the upstream systems that were sending him data were not going to change. And they didn't change during warranty, as expected. But today, at 3 a.m., sometime before then, source system changed their databases or their APIs, their file layouts, however you're getting your source. That changed, but they didn't let anyone else know. They also sent some weird corrupted data. You know, they sent, things got shifted. It was a delimited file and there was an extra comma, so it just shifted everything over. Not fun things. But the result that we saw, Bruce's pipeline exploded with silently exploded, as things usually do. There weren't any warnings. It doesn't say anything other than the business person's like, I don't have the right data, why? And there's an array of errors. You're just like, I don't even know where to start. So, one lesson is, that we already talked about, is don't build your stance on sand. That's the foundation. But then we get into the actual lesson of schema evolution. And someone wise, maybe a relative of Bruce, our antagonist here, once said, adapt what is useful and reject what is useless. So anytime you're doing martial arts, if something isn't working, get rid of it. Don't do it. I'm not the greatest at moving around and being quick, so I don't try that. But I'm very strong, and so that's where I make my hay in Kung Fu. And no one's like, hey, you're not doing Kung Fu right. But because I'm adapting what is useful to me, that's the goal. So Bruce, he trusted what the source system sent him, and he never built a system to try and test it or question it. So really what we need to be doing with our data pipelines is we need to be adapting what is useful. We need to let things through the front door that we're like, yes, that is what I want, that is useful. And we need to reject the useless stuff. We don't need to let that in. Think of your data pipeline and there's a bouncer right in front. And they're like, I'm not even gonna let the data into the pipeline if it doesn't have a valid ID, it's not a fake ID. I'm gonna test that ID, make sure it's not fake, make sure you're 21. If that's true, all right, you can go through. So we need to have things in place that act as a bouncer. So some ideas. One is, one thing that always happens is you get a null value in a field, and in the database, it's like, hey, this is not supposed to be null. Don't know what to do with it. And you just get an error. So why don't you just make your fields nullable by default? I can put null values in there, and then you can have different things, different mechanisms to say, hey, there shouldn't be a null value in here, so I need to do something with that. I need to not send it downstream. I need to fix it. I need to put it in a rejection queue, something just so that my pipeline doesn't crash. So that's one thing. Another thing, most APIs, at least well-constructed, well-architected APIs, they have versions. And there's contracts, there's schema contracts, where it's like, this is what this API is saying, the data is gonna look like, and there's a contract. Trust all of your data like that. Make sure you're saying, if I'm getting this data, this is what it should look like. And there's a ton of different services that you can use. If you use Apache, you're probably familiar with Apache Avro or Avro, but there's a lot of different schema, registry, schema validation services out there, and a lot of times, yeah, they're used for APIs, which is good, but you can also use it for other things, like if you have a file, if you're just connecting to a database, it's like, hey, let's make sure this data is how it should be, and if not, I'm just gonna set it aside and move on. Also, defensive parsing and data validation. So I never assume that if I'm getting data, it is how I want it to be. So I use regular expressions, all of the fun stuff to say, hey, this should be a number. It's gonna be a number. If not, get out of here. Not letting you through the front door. So yeah, your pipeline's job is to be paranoid at the front door so nothing weird makes it into the house. It's not, schema, whether it's schema evolution or any of these things that we're gonna be talking about, it isn't about predicting every change that you're gonna come across. Things change, that's okay. But instead it's about building a system that bends with the change instead of breaks. So, all right, we go back in time and we talk to Bruce and we say, hey, can you do some of this for us? Like, this would be really good. It would set us up for success. Bruce is like, yeah, I can do that. He uses AI, he just types it into his prompt. All right, the past has changed. We no longer have to worry about that, right? So we're back to present day, and you wake up to an urgent phone call from your boss at 3 a.m. History somehow is repeating itself. It feels familiar for some reason. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you feel like you've experienced this before. Us, the audience watching the movie, we know that we went back in time. Our developer went back in time and got Bruce to implement some things. There's a lot less missed calls. Good. A lot less messages. The error log still has a lot in there, but there's a little bit less. We've all been here. We all do what any responsible data engineer would do at this point. You fix the problem, right? Right? Wrong again. You think about falling asleep to Back to the Future, but you're saying, my future isn't very funny. I don't want a funny movie to fall asleep to. I want something deep. I want something serious. I'm going to put Interstellar on. And you're falling in and out of consciousness, and the movie's playing in the background. You hear Matthew McConaughey yell, Murph, no, don't let me go, Murph, no. Sorry if you've never seen Interstellar. It's playing here in a minute, so it's a great movie. It's my favorite movie. But the picture I have that you'll see, so the whole plot, he goes out into interstellar space, loses a bunch of time, and ends up being able to see into his past. And that's where he's telling his daughter that he sees, don't let me go. What if we were able to do that? What if we were able to enter into the Tesseract? I'm not going to go into what the Tesseract is. I have a friend, Kirk, here. He will explain it great. He was the first person to explain it to me, and it made sense. So if you have questions, ask him. He's your guy. But what lesson would we try and teach Bruce? So we're looking through our logs. We're like, hey, a lot of those messages were because I'm getting duplicate data. How did we get duplicate data? So 6 months ago, when Bruce built our pipeline, he built the pipeline to run once on a data set from start to finish, no interruptions. That's how it should work. That was the plan. The assumptions were baked into every line of code that, hey, this file, we're only going to see this data once. Anything new that we get, it's going to be different. But overnight, the database went down halfway through our load, and it aired out. And our people at the help desk that are so helpful, before they called you, they were like, hey, it's just a database thing. Like, let's just rerun this failed job. It'll be fine. The problem is, it's not fine. If we go back to a couple slides and see our errors, it's like, hey, there's duplicate records, there's primary key violations, like retry, all this stuff. Like, if we were able to do something to say, hey, when we get duplicate records, do something with that. If we were able to do that, then yeah, we'd be better off. So again, a wise man in a movie, he once said, what, you think a fight is one throw, one kick? No, of course not. If you're actually in a fight, then you got to be expected to be hit more than once. The fighter who trains for one clean exchange, it's just like, hey, we're sparring and boom, I hit you. Okay, we're done. I won. We're done. You're not prepared for a real fight. Like that is going to be useless. If you're in a real fight, man, the other person is probably a little bit inebriated. They're not going to let up. They're just trying to pound you into the ground. So we need a pipeline that can run safely, even when it's getting the same information. The databases that'll eventually come back up mid-load. Your orchestrator or your help desk, they're going to retry the job on a timeout. Even people ask like, hey, we have this data. We actually didn't get the right data. So can you run this for this data set that was from last week? And if you don't have idempotency, there we go. I said it right? Idempotency. If we don't have that, then it's going to be just a nightmare. You're going to run into errors. You're going to have to run into cleanup, doing a lot of things manually. And that's not what we want. We don't want to get woken up at 3 in the morning to do, hey, delete everything from yesterday. So the fix, a couple things you can do. You can have deterministic keys. You can say, hey, if I see this data and it's repeated, don't process it again, just skip it. You could prefer if you're doing like inserts and things like that into your database, you could do an upsert instead. So that's, update, or if it's not there, if you don't match on that key, insert the record. But if you have that, if you see that key, update it with the new information. Super helpful. Having safe processing windows. And so what I mean by this, one second, there we go. I don't know what's happening. There we go. So yeah, you design your pipeline to process data in clean bounded windows. So you're saying, hey, I'm going to process everything I got in 15-minute increments. That way, if something goes wrong, you can start where you left off. You don't even need to worry about the stuff that you've already processed. Instead of doing, I just need everything new from the last run. It's like, okay, run it in predictable windows. And ultimately, you want to make your pipeline safe to retry. That's what the term idempotency means. And, here's a practical test for you to think about with your data pipeline. Just like in our scenario, if your pipeline fails halfway through and your orchestration retries it automatically, does it make things worse? It shouldn't. If it does, you need to think about some things. So how can we run this twice? Is there some cleanup that we can automatically do, even if it doesn't need to do it? Lots of things to go there, but just good questions to ask is how can we make this safe to retry? There we go. So we taught Bruce our lesson. The past has changed. Unfortunately, our boss still calls us at 3 a.m. because there's all these errors. There's stuff going on. All right, we fixed 2 of the things. We need to go and I wish we could tell Bruce something to fix some of these other errors. But instead, we're just going to fix the problem, right? Wrong. If you haven't noticed. We're just going to go fall asleep. But we're going to play our favorite movie, Hot Tub Time Machine. Because Interstellar, my brain already hurts. I don't want a deep movie. I'm going to just turn on Hot Tub Time Machine. Great. And you're falling in and out of consciousness. You think to yourself, I need to fix this. I could really use a Chernobyl energy drink and a soak and a nice hot tub. And you're like, wait, what if that hot tub was a time machine? We could use it to go back, tell Bruce something. So what's important? What else would we tell Bruce that's important? So observability. So just like in a fight, you don't want to charge in blindly. You have to listen. Listen. That's what Bruce Lee says. So the problem that we encountered was Bruce got the data flowing. He called it done. There was no logging beside basic errors. There were no metrics, no alerts. The pipeline ran, and that was enough. And the pipeline failed silently for 3 days, and we had no idea because we didn't have any alerts. We didn't have anything to know, any way to know that our pipeline failed other than our business partner called and said, hey, I'm not seeing data for the past couple days. So that's 3 days of bad data. Bad. The lesson here is that the warrior who fights without information fights twice. He's fighting 2 battles. You're doing way more than you need to do because you need to figure out what's wrong first and then fix it. But if we had observability, if we had metrics, if we had row counts at every stage of our pipeline, if we had null rate tracking, if we had latency monitoring saying, and this is how long our pipeline is taking, if there were alerts or dashboards on anomalies, not just an exception when those run, we'd be able to fight that battle a lot easier. We'd have all the information we need. We don't need to go digging through the logs, all of that. We can be proactive, which is what we want. We don't want to be called at 3 a.m. We want to fix all the problems between 9 and 5, not 3 a.m. No one's brain works at 3 a.m. And again, hope is not a monitoring strategy. Keep that in mind. Saying, I hope that this pipeline works, it's not a good strategy. It's not a good monitoring strategy. So You go back, you tell Bruce this, in your hot tub time machine. Bruce is questioning, why is there a hot tub? Like, I don't understand. Don't worry about it. The past has changed. You're back. You're like, okay, everything is going to be good. I'm going to get a good night's sleep. Fortunately, you wake up at 3 a.m. to your boss calling and saying, hey, things are still going wrong. You're like, this feels familiar. I feel like I'm in Groundhog's Day. The same thing just keeps happening, but it's a little bit different. Again, we, the audience, know that we went back, told Bruce some things. Things are a little bit different. Not as many errors, not as many missed calls and messages, not as many people on Slack saying, hey, what's the update? When is this going to get fixed? Why didn't QA catch this? But there's still errors. There's still issues. Your business partners still don't have their data right. What do? Responsible data engineer. You fix the problem, right? Of course not. You go to your couch and fall asleep. And you think about putting on your favorite movie, Hot Tub Time Machine, but you're feeling nostalgic for the good old days of young Keanu Reeves. You want something funny, so you put on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Great movie. Unfortunately, not one that they're showing here. Neither is Hot Tub Time Machine, but maybe next year. And as you're falling in and out of consciousness with the movie playing in the background, between the party on, dudes, and excellent, you begin to wonder, what if? Strange things are afoot at the Circle K down the road. There's this phone booth that might be able to take me to the past. What if I could tell Bruce something? If I could go back to the past? What is something else I would tell him? Testability. And this is such a huge topic that there's so many things we could say about it. But instead, we're just going to say, 6 months ago, Bruce built his pipeline, and he tested it in production. He's like, we don't have the right data. We don't have the right stuff. So I'm just going to test it in production, be done with it. It looked right. He shipped it. Done. Good to go. But today, a bug was found. Records with null values and key fields were being silently dropped. There was way more volume of data coming in, and it couldn't keep up, and everything is going super slow. Oh, that's a tough place to be. And the result that we see from Bruce's lack of testing was that every change was a gamble. It's like, I hope this works. I hope I don't break anything else, and that usually does not do well. Bruce Lee once said, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Has practiced 10,000. Yeah. I don't fear the man who has practiced 10,000 different kicks once. I fear the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once. So what does that have to do with testing? And what does that really have to do with anything? So, we need to be able to make sure we're testing and we have accurate, repeatable tests so that we can go in having confidence that this works. This is what it should be. So again, that's testing. We're doing that 10,000. We're doing the same thing over and over again, testing to make sure we didn't break anything. So your pipeline should work the same way. If you've never run it outside of production, you haven't really run it at all. So some things that you can do. In the age of AI, this is so easy because you have your code. You can just say, hey, can you write some unit tests? Can you test these fixtures? Can you test these transformations? Having parameterized inputs so that you can point to different data sources so that you're not just always pointing to production. You really want to be able to test without consequences. And a big one is, and especially in data pipelines, is being able to performance test, because there's no way in lower environments you're going to be able to have that same data, but you got to try. We got to know what happens if we stress test our pipeline, because in the age of data, like, we're just getting so much more data now than we ever got. We're getting more people coming to our websites. We're getting more information, and that's got to go through our pipeline. So test for more than you think you're going to get, because then you know what's going to happen when you get more. So we tell Bruce, hey, will you use your AI, write some unit tests, write some integration tests, do some performance testing to make sure that when the volume doubles or triples, we don't run into any problems. It's like, sure, I can do that, no problem. So we go back, we hop into our phone booth, and the past has changed, and you wake up again at 3 a.m. to your boss, and you're like, hey, Dad, this seems so familiar. Why does this keep happening? Again, we the audience know why. Bruce did a lot of good things, but there's still a couple things that Bruce did not do, because we're still getting called at 3 in the morning. We have Jordan and Sam saying, hey, when is this going to be done? Your boss is calling you. We've all been here. So you do what every responsible data engineer does, right? You fix the problem, right? Of course not. Instead, you fall asleep on your couch and you put on your favorite movie, Avengers Endgame. Between the Hulk memes of, hey, I see this as an absolute win, and Avengers Assemble, and also, I am Iron Man, you begin to wonder, what if I got a hold of Ant-Man's van to travel into the quantum realm and into a parallel universe to get the Infinity Stones to be able to come back and somehow teach Bruce a lesson? What lesson would we try and teach? And this is the biggest lesson. If you don't walk away with anything, this next lesson is the one. Design for change. And that's ultimately what all of these are building to. So 6 months ago, Bruce's pipeline was right. And it was tight, it was clean, it did exactly what it was supposed to do for the problem ahead of him. It handled the exact volume they were expected, the schema, the delivery cadence, like it was all right for the fight that he knew was coming. But today, the volume, again, it's hundreds of times what it was. The requirements have shifted, the source system restructured. There's so many changes that go on in our world at a rapid pace. And the result is the pipeline didn't bend with that extra pressure, it broke. It totally shattered. And you would probably need to do at this point maybe a full rewrite, not because the original was bad, it was fine, it did its job, but because it was built for one specific fight, and unfortunately that fight changed. One of the most popular and well-known Bruce Lee quotes is where he's doing an interview and he says, "You need to be like water, my friend." And then he goes on to explain that, where he says, water is formless, it takes on the shape of whatever container it's in. And then he says, this is something I never forget. Notice the stiffest tree, it's easily cracked. Like the stiff trees, if you're from Ohio, we've had really bad windstorms. And those brittle trees, they crack, they fall on your house, you have to put in insurance claims, not fun. But if you have bamboo trees or trees that are more flexible, or willow trees, it survives by bending with the wind. So it's bending, it's not just cracking. So that's what we need to think about as we're developing our data pipelines. We need to have modular stages. We need to have independent, non-monolithic pipelines so that there isn't a single point of failure. So that if there is a change, you can fix it in this one place and not have to worry about everything else. Those are decoupled, don't have to worry about it. This is not just something for software, it's for data too. Super important. Again, we've kind of gone over this with the idempotency. Again, there's that word. But make sure it's backfill friendly. So at some point, the requirements are going to change. You need to reprocess historical data. Account for that. Say, hey, what happens if, we need to reprocess the last 2 weeks? Keep that in mind. You need to have smart partition strategies, whether that's on your databases, whether that's on your data. So, instead of processing a whole week of data, why don't we process it a couple of days at a time so that we're not putting as much volume in there. That way, if there is more volume, we could say, hey, we're going to shrink that window to every 8 hours. Awesome. And also loose coupling between layers. Where most data pipelines fail, even if you have segmented layers, is that layer A depends on, or layer B depends on layer A, layer C depends on layer B, sometimes layer Z even. Try to make them as independent as you can while making sure that the data flows correctly through them. And that's where we go back to testing. That's where we have good design principles and all of that. So again, awesome. The past has changed. We got our infinity gauntlet. Boom. Our pipeline that Bruce delivered to us was magical. And you wake up to, oh wait, it's 3 a.m. You're sleeping with no worries in the world, and you're cuddling with your favorite dinosaur. That's where we want to be, right? That is the 3 a.m. that I want. Look at how happy he is. So Bruce is redeemed. This is the remake. You know, we're in the timeline now of the remake, where before you had silent failures at 3 a.m. There were double data because you had to rerun some things, and so everyone was freaking out, like, hey, why are these numbers so skewed? It was the app was untestable. You were unable to do any meaningful performance or stress testing. It just exploded. Like, this is not good. And we had to do a full rewrite when the requirements shifted. But now, as we've gone back through the audience, we know we've gone back several times to fix this. And there's anomaly alerts so that it says, hey, here's some data that doesn't exactly look right. Hey, you might want to take a look at that. It's idempotent. There we go. It only took me 5 times. But it's safe to retry and reprocess data. You don't have to worry about duplicate data. We have a full test suite. There's no consequences for changing. We know that, hey, this can handle all the data we want to throw at it. We are confident of that. Your schema evolution, it's handled gracefully. If our upstream system changes, we get alerts saying, hey, this is not right. Take a look before it happens. And we're modular. Our pipeline bends like a good pipeline instead of breaking. I had a pipe burst in my house a couple months ago. It was awful, and it was because it was brittle. It didn't bend when it should have. So that's not where we want to be. And again, Bruce isn't the bad guy. He was at best uninformed and maybe at worst just not thinking long term. And that's where we need to be with our data pipelines or our software in general. Like, these principles could apply to anything. So before you go watch the movie, here's the principles again. Build in, expect your schema to change, expect your data to change, plan for it. Make it idempotent. Make sure that if you run the same data multiple times, nothing happens. Everything's good. Observe everything. You don't want to go into that fight blind. So I love just logging even the smallest things because I can go back and look at it and say, hey, here's some trends, here's some dashboards. We want to test without consequences. Testing in production, it sounds cool, it sounds exciting. But if that's all we do, there's going to be consequences. And be water, my friends. Design for change. So Bruce left before he could fix his data pipelines. That's why we had to go back in the past, help Bruce. But you're still here. You can fix your pipelines. Start small. Just do something. Take one of these and say, hey, I hate it when I have to get woken up at 3 a.m. Here's usually what happens. I'm going to do something about that. Man, there's nothing better than enjoying a good night's sleep when you're on call. So go enjoy the movie. You've already seen the real disaster film. So our pipeline, Bruce, he made a disaster for us. But go enjoy the movie. And that is it. I think, do we have any questions on Discord or any questions here? We got a couple minutes.
How do you say the I word again?
Idempotent. And actually when I like looked up a video or a soundbite and it was like, how do you say this? And I listened to it repeatedly. There was one that was like, you could say idempotent or idempotent. It's like, we're going with idempotent. That's what we're going with. So yeah, appreciate you guys having me. I enjoyed it. I hope that you take something from this that you can go back and implement, whether that's with your software, whether it's with your data pipelines. Good luck and enjoy the movie. There's a feedback QR code up here, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I know this wasn't a super technical talk, but I hope you enjoyed it. And we got